Live from all over this beautiful land, this is the Testosterone Zone with Noel, Keith, and Steve. Take it, boys!
Hey, howdy, everybody. Welcome to episode 65 of the Testosterone Zone podcast. This is Steve. I'm here with Noel and Keith. How you doing, guys?
Great, man.
Doing great.
Awesome. Well, hey, it's good to be back. We haven't done this in a couple weeks, and we got a cool show. Today's going to really be about the world of being a ham operator and ham radio process, and I'm looking forward to learning something here. I've been aware of this for a while, but I've never dived into it. So, Keith, you invited a good friend of yours, Jonathan Golden, to join us. So why don't you introduce him and let's get started.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Hey, everybody. Appreciate you all listening today. Yeah, Jonathan is a friend of mine. We've actually gotten to know each other because of our kids. They have been playing baseball together this year. And so we got to visiting, and we were at one of the games. I guess it was over in Midland. And all of a sudden I hear him talking about contesting and something else to do. And like my ear perked up. I'm like, wait a minute. He's a ham radio guy, you know? And so from that moment on, we're like, okay, we got to talk about this, you know? And so pretty excited to have you on, Jonathan. Thank you and welcome.
Hey, well, thank you for inviting me, Keith, and Steve and Noel. I appreciate y'all inviting me on here. I'm looking forward to it myself. I'm always looking for an opportunity to promote the hobby.
Awesome. Well, it's a hobby it's kind of a lost art that's slowly regaining some momentum. And that's kind of why we've been excited to talk to you about this today, because really with the advent of different technologies, ham radio is kind of back, and it's back in a traditional way, but there is also a whole new way that amateur radio and ham radio operators can communicate around the world. And so I'm very excited about us having the chance to talk about some of these new techniques, some of the traditional techniques, and things that are just still alive and well. So appreciate you being on. So want to talk to you first of all. So when you're wanting, a lot of us that are listening, I've had a lot of people talking and excited about this episode. So I think we should just start with the basics. So when you are learning the idea or getting to understand the concept that maybe I would like to, get to understand how to become a ham radio operator, what are the beginning steps that you recommend?
Okay, well, this day and age, it's very, very easy. You can, of course, you got Google. You've got there's all kind of ham radio apps. There's different apps you can get for the license levels. Start with technician, go to general, and extra is the top. There's 3 levels. You can do an app search for technician license practice tests, as on up to extra. You can general, extra, there's practice tests all over, and there's different apps and stuff you can get. And so that kind of, the cell phone technology has really helped in that aspect. You can take practice tests all day, until you're comfortable going to take the actual test. So that's a big benefit nowadays. There's my personal, when guys ask me, well, where do I start? I send them I send a link to them about an audio book. It's a reading book, but I think it's got an audio book that follows it if you want, and it's like the easy way to the technician class license or something. I'd have to look it up to see what it is, but so no, there's plenty of stuff on the internet to study now, and it, like I say, it's pretty easy to find information, and if you're really, really uncertain, that you can even Google local ham clubs for your area, mm-hmm. and a lot of guys are willing to, a lot of active hams are willing to help you in any way they can, and they call those active hams, if somebody helps you in the ham community learn something or get a leg up, they call them an Elmer. So that's just kind of the ham term for a teacher.
Gotcha. Right. So you mentioned the 3 levels of licensure. So can you kind of explain what the different levels are and why you would want to go up for the higher levels?
Sure. Technician seems fairly easy to me. Now, let me preface this with, I've been radioing since I was 15 years old. I'm 48 now. I've been a licensed ham for 3 years. Looked into getting my ham license several times, earlier on in my life, but kind of lost interest. But I've been radioing since age 15. So this go around in I guess it was March of 2016, or prior to that, winter of 2016. I told my wife, I said, "Well, I'm gonna get my ham license," and just finally, put my nose to the grindstone and started studying. Which the technician was very easy for all the years that I had in.
What made you get? I'm sorry, Jonathan. What
Yeah,
made
go
you
ahead.
get into it back when you were 15?
Well, I don't know. I guess it was just basically being a redneck. I got into CB radio to talk to
Breaker 19.
There you go, and there's certain high horse hams that they won't admit getting their start in CB radio, but I promise you, man, 90% of them did.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, he's right about the technician. Even I can get that one. So
yeah, there you go. No, the technician is fairly easy, and I struggle to remember the dates and some of the stuff I should have written down, but somewhere from, I want to say 97 ish, they started dropping the code CW, which is Morse code. So you can get now. It started with just a technician. You could become a technician without learning Morse code. Then they included generals, and now it's all the way up to, you can go all the way to your extra license without even having to learn Morse code, which the old timer hams,
they don't like that.
They do not like that, but it is what it is. They've done what they've had to do to grow the hobby, and most of the time everybody gets along, and some, there's some, hardcore people out there. But anyway, you can go all the way to the top license without learning Morse code now. And that opened it up to a lot of people that was a big struggle for.
Right. And so the license levels, they basically open up different radio frequencies that you can use, correct?
Exactly. With your technician license, you can do 2 meter, which is it's UHF, VHF. VHF is very high frequency, and UHF is ultra high frequency. So 2 meter is VHF stuff, which has always been the most common. It's mostly talking through repeaters, as well as UHF is repeater based, where it's
right.
Those signals are more line of sight. You get
explain what a repeater is.
Okay, a repeater is basically you have to be within line of sight signal wise of a repeater, and say if I've got a repeater 3 miles from my home or something, I might could hit it with a handheld, and it basically shoots the signal out. The repeater may be up on a tower, anywhere from 300 feet to, I know of some repeaters that are 1,200 feet high. So you can, depending on the height, you can hit them from further away. The UHF, VHF stuff is more line of sight. So if you've got a repeater antenna at 50 feet, you might be able to hit it 10 miles away. If you've got a repeater side at 1,200 feet, which is the case with one that I know of down in the Del Rio area, I can hit that thing from 60 miles away, and then it rebroadcasts your signal that equal distance in a 360 degree radius is basically,
Yeah. And it's basically line of sight, and the higher you go because of the curvature of Earth is why.
Exactly. VHF and UHF signals tend to be absorbed by the Earth's atmosphere.
Right. Right. So that's the technician. And so then when you jump into the general, what opens up?
Okay. When you jump into the general, you get some HF frequencies, which is it's high frequency is what HF stands for, but it's coming from CB. It's odd to me because HF is actually lower than any CB frequency that you ever use. But anyway, that opens up a lot of different bands. HF mostly operates, and that's a whole nother segment, but the ham radios the bands are segregated into meters. Like you've got the 2 meter band, which is 144 megahertz. You've got the 70 centimeter band, which is 440. Well, you get into HF, and that's 6 meter, 10 meter, 20 meter, 40 meter, 80 meter, and the band length, that's the width of the bandwidth. So you say a 40 meter signal is going to be from the top of the signal to the bottom of the signal is going to be 250 some odd feet. I'd have to look at the calculations, but anyway, that's what you get into your bandwidths are, from the peak to the bottom.
Yeah,
and,
basically the wavelengths up and down.
The wavelength, so. Exactly. And anyway, the HF stuff is signals that are bounced off of the atmosphere at different levels. There's several different levels of the atmosphere, and one
right.
level may be reflecting one day, and one level, it's all crazy dependent on the sun cycle, sunspots, solar storms. It's pretty. It gets, if you really dig into it, it gets pretty in depth.
It really does. But what HF does is it really opens up to a more global or a more longer distance communication, because instead of depending on repeaters in line of sight, these waves can bounce, like you say, off of the atmosphere and reach a lot further distances because of the length of their wave, so to speak. So it does open that up.
What's the furthest away that you've been able to communicate, Jonathan?
It's hard to say. I mean, I've talked all over the world. I've talked to Japan. And I do a lot of mobile stuff. I've a lot of ham guys don't do HF mobile. HF mobile is very hard because going back to the wavelength type deal, the lower the frequency, the longer the wave is. So, and basically the longer the wave is, the larger the antenna is that you have to have to receive it. So,
right. So it's not just a send, it's a reception too, that you both have to have that.
That's right. That's right. So HF mobile's pretty tough, but I've talked, I'm in my truck a lot. So I've devoted a lot of my time to HF mobile, and I've talked just recently, this spring's been real good to me. HF mobile. I've been on 20 meters and talked several times to Japan, Slovenia, the island the Isle of Crete is what they say, over close to Greece, and just worldwide. But it all depends on the conditions of the day. I could talk to the Isle of Crete today, and I might not hear that guy for another month.
Yeah, it's totally dependent on atmosphere and all those just factors of the environment, really. There's even people that bounce frequencies off the tail of comets. Am I wrong? And
you're right.
And meteors and things of that sort. So they even use the surface of the moon to bounce wavelengths off or signals off of.
The guys that do that moon bounce is called EME. It's Earth, Moon, Earth. They've got special antennas that big arrays of antennas that just shoot straight towards the moon, and the other stuff you're talking about is like meteor scatter. They try to bounce their signals off of meteor dust. Basically, there's some real crazy stuff, and I haven't gotten into any of that, but there's lots of guys that do that.
It's crazy that you can even do that.
I remember Keith once bounced a burp off of a mountaintop. It was impressive.
And that was
very impressive
for miles and miles.
I'm not gonna lie, I got a license for that. So
he's not a technician; he is the Terminator.
That's right. That's about what I'm good at bouncing. Yeah. So I'm just a technician. So but it's been fun. There's so many different nuances to this hobby. You can go as simple as you want to, so I'm just starting. I got my license around the same time that Jonathan got his, but I haven't really gotten onto the more advanced levels. Life gets in the way. But even with my license, what's fun about it is I can use the repeaters, and you can get around the internet and find a bunch of different repeaters on your location. Just going to, oh gosh, help me out. What's the repeaterbook.com?
Repeater
right?
book. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they have an app also.
There's an app for everything, right? And so you can find the actual signals for all your repeaters and plug them into I even have just a handheld. That's all I have is a little $40 handheld radio. So this isn't an expensive hobby to get started, really. And the nice thing is you can plug these repeaters in, and I've gotten to talk to different people. There is, there's even emergency services that you can participate in. Jonathan and I are both part of the emergency. It's called what, ARES, right?
ARES, yes.
Yeah, and that's Amateur Radio Emergency Service. Isn't that the name of it is?
That is correct.
And so, yeah, what they have every week, they have kind of a test run where at 9:00. Is it on Wednesday or Monday?
It's on Wednesday at 9.
Yeah.
And they call them nets. It's
nets,
basically, that's
Go ahead and explain what that is.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Almost every club has a net every week, and Keith's referring to the ARES net that we have locally on a repeater system here in West Texas. It's called the West Texas Connection. It's I think it's 19 repeaters, but anyway, it's large. There's a repeater in Sanderson is the furthest south. There's a repeater in, say, La Mesa would be the furthest north. Colorado City, east,
Carlsbad,
and Dark Canyon and Carlsbad. So anywhere in that circle, you say, which is pretty large, if you can hit one of those machines, one of those repeaters, then you can hit. Then you're talking to every one of them. So the Skywarn guys around here use it quite a bit. If thunderstorms are in the area, they'll activate a Skywarn net and the weather spotters and such. But net's basically held at a certain time every week, depending on which net it is, and it's basically a test of your equipment. Make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do, and you can communicate.
So, and a lot of this, like ARES, this is what was used when the hurricane hit New York City, when Puerto Rico went down. A lot of these ARES, credentialed operators will be dispatched to these places that they don't have any communications because of storms and whatnot, and they use what Jonathan's saying with this practice and testing of the equipment. These are things that people can be sent into these emergency areas to help with communication. And so it's a fun hobby because you really can use it for good in the community. And they'll use these kind of area nets for even, to manage large parades. They use them for, and so it's not just something that you just sit around and you can sit around and visit with people all over the world, but it's actually a mobile type of thing where you like Jonathan, he's really big into mobile, but he can use his with his handheld. He can use it in his truck. If there's an emergency somewhere, these people are all of them are trained to be able to communicate, and there's certain signals and codes that you use for different situations. And so even with just a simple technician license, you can help with these kind of things, which makes it a lot of fun,
That's cool.
So
that's really cool.
So to be clear, if there's no such thing as that, you can't just simply buy the radio and get started. You have to actually get a license first, right?
Exactly. Yeah. You have got to take a license. Now, you can buy radios off of Amazon or whatever and look up on repeaterbook.com or whatever and find frequencies and listen. But to actually transmit, you have to have a license.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you can listen all you want. And so it was kind of my motivation while I was trying to study, get the license, I'd have I'd look on you, and you can look on YouTube, and they tell you how to program handheld radios and all sorts of stuff. There's software to even just preload everything where you don't even have to input it yourself. And so I would listen to different things, and that was kind of my motivation. Like, okay, this is kind of fun. People are really, getting into this. And so it's good. You can listen to it. There's even things on the internet called software defined radio. And there's one that I use that's in Europe, but it's fun because it basically gives you the entire spectrum of the everything that amateur radios and beyond can use. And it's almost like a shortwave, ham radio, everything in between that you can use through your computer to try to find everything from shortwave radio stations. There are, you can even listen to amateur radios, operators talking on 6 meters and things like that. These high HF frequencies, like Jonathan was talking about. You can even, talk to or just listen to Morse code. So you can find Morse code. You can find, I've even found nautical signals where you can hear the beacons for nautical maneuvering on these things. And every once in a while, Jonathan, you might want to talk about these, you're familiar with the number stations, right?
Yes.
So to explain kind of these are some other things that you discover from time to time. What are these things?
Well, you got to, one thing I wanted to touch on. You were talking about nautical stations and
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
weather.
Go on.
Let me before I forget about that. Like on 20 meters, there's a frequency up high in the 20-meter band. It's 14,300, I believe, is what it is. Maybe 325, but anyway, they run a maritime net and a hurricane net, which is anytime there's a hurricane, threatening. Man, it's HF operators from, and the guy running the net may be in Michigan. He's not threatened at all, but he may have good conditions to the Florida coast or wherever, and it's pretty wild to sit and listen to that kind of stuff. People calling in and giving their, hey, the wind is this here. We've got this rate of rain per hour, and so anyway, yeah, it's pretty interesting, to use ham radio like that. Ham radio is used a lot in emergencies. You mentioned Puerto Rico and stuff like that. That was the only way they were getting communications, after their big disaster.
Right.
So, yeah. Anyway, and the number station deal, I'm not crazy familiar with that stuff, so I don't want to. I don't want to,
Yeah, talk too much about that.
Right.
So yeah, one of the things that there's every once in a while you'll come upon like just a funny thing on this shortwave radio or ham radio where you'll just hear like somebody either doing numbers or somebody in a foreign tongue repeating something. And there's all sorts of speculation as to what these are. Are they, foreign countries trying to do some sort of secret code? Are these what they call pirates, somebody that's kind of overtaken a web or a station to just try to, bring all sorts of conspiracies out. So it's crazy. It's funny how active all of these radio stations still are. Cause you would have thought like, after the internet and all of this stuff came into being, most of this stuff would have gone by the wayside, but it is every bit as active now with all of these different unique things going on as it was in the 80s, really. And so that's another thing, you do another thing called D-Star, which is a lot more computer translated based. So tell us a little bit about how some of these new modern tools are used for amateur radio.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Some of the new stuff, the digital stuff, that involves computer and things like that. I'm not big into that, but I did get into D-Star. We had a bunch of guys here locally that kind of jumped on the D-Star bandwagon, and so I went ahead and jumped in, and I like it. I'm not going to say I don't like it, but the way I explain it, to me, it's not real radio, but it's real cool. Real radio to me is bouncing signals off the atmosphere,
Right.
D-Star it has been a great tool to me. I love it. I don't know. You can, so you have what they call reflectors, which are, you can kind of look at it this way. You talk into your radio and you either go into a repeater or what they call a hotspot. My particular one is a Zoom spot. They've got DV megas and stuff like that, but you guys are more computer oriented probably than me, but you may be familiar with Raspberry Pis.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically a very tiny, like say let me explain my Zoom spot. So it's basically a very tiny UHF radio that plugs into a Raspberry Pi. Then, so I can even do it from a handheld. I've done it many times from Lake Amistad on the boat fishing. I'll use a handheld and talk. I could talk all over the world. It's crazy technology, as long as you have phone service. But say I'm talking from my handheld, so I talk into my handheld. It goes into the UHF radio that is connected on top of the Raspberry Pi. It sends that information digitally into the Raspberry Pi, which is Bluetooth to my cell phone, and that puts it into the internet.
Gosh.
And
I think you just used all known technology in that one transmission.
Exactly. It's really crazy. So it's basically like, they call it the D-Star gateway. You go into the gateway, and the way I like to explain it is you send your signal into a humongous room that has thousands of doors, and you can program which door you want your signal to go out of. So if the guys here in Odessa are talking on a particular reflector, which we use 689 hotel, which is 689H. So as long as if I'm in Del Rio, or last summer my boy played a baseball tournament in Colorado, every evening I just plugged that stuff in and talked basically via handheld to all the buddies of mine back here in town. So it's pretty neat technology. It's not like I say, it's not bouncing your signal off the atmosphere, and if the internet ever goes down, you're jacked. But other than that, it's pretty cool.
So Keith, what radio do you have?
I just have I have a little. It's called a Baofeng, Baofeng, and it's the brand. I guess the edition of it is the UV5R. So it's one of those that there are tons of people who use these. They're very inexpensive.
Probably the most popular radio out there.
They probably are, yeah. And then they have. I use a different antenna on it from the one that it came with. I use a Nagoya Nagoya antenna. It's the one that comes with it is just a little bit smaller antenna. Doesn't provide as much of a range, and so I was trying to get one that would provide a little bit better range. But yeah, like I say, on on an easy night, I can go outside my house and I can hit one of the repeaters, and sometimes it's a little difficult just because mine doesn't have the power or the antenna of others, but it's good enough to where I can usually reach a repeater pretty good and at least communicate. So it's like I say, the nice thing about this hobby is you can start off as with as much cost or as little cost as, you could probably get started in this hobby for $50, wouldn't you think?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I'm looking at Amazon right now, and tons of options under $50.
Yeah. So it's not an expensive hobby. It can be. Oh, right, Jonathan. Not going to judge. But
well, no, I'm walking around here with one kidney and one leg missing. I had to sell those, but yeah, no, you can get into it on the cheap, no problem. Like I say, but as you go on and you get into HF, you can even get into HF on the cheap.
Yeah.
But as you go on and on and on, you can get into HF on the cheap because, like I was saying, the frequencies or the wavelength are so large that basically from, I don't know, from 20 meters down, unless you can afford a great big Yagi, a great big directional beam antenna, 90% of the people on HF talk on a piece of wire,
Yeah.
And just the lower in frequency you go, the longer the wire is. You talk about if you go all the way down to 160 meters, which was always the lowest band. Now they've opened up some stuff that's way lower, but a full wave on 160 meters is 560 feet from the top to the bottom of the wave. So a full wave loop wire antenna would be basically 560, 564. You know what I mean? It's right in there, but 560 some odd feet of wire, and most, 12 gauge is sufficient. And you've got a HF antenna. You just got to have the room to put it up. You know what I mean? It's just, so yeah. It can be very expensive. There's a very big part of the hobby that is called 100 watts and a wire. And that's basically an HF rig off the shelf will put out at 100 watts, and you put up a wire antenna, and that's probably logically, 85 to 90% of the guys out there talk on 100 watts in a wire.
You can look on YouTube, and there are thousands of videos on people making homemade antennas. In fact, one of the biggest, there's a whole new other side of amateur radio that is people who build their own radios and build their own antennas and don't just buy things off the shelf. And so, not only can you get really complicated with the costs of buying these really fantastic pieces of equipment. But if you want to learn the electrical side and the I guess the engineering, so to speak, side of things, you can learn how to build your own radio circuitry, antenna, and everything. So it's just however far deep you want to go into something.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that, I follow this group on Facebook called Ham Radio Go Kits. Nice. And yeah, it's impressive what they put together on there. And so following that page for I don't know how long, I'm relieved to hear that I can start this for only $50 because what they do is no doubt 1,000 plus.
Yeah, not $50. Yeah.
Right. There's a group on Facebook, and they also have a podcast too, but it's called 100 Watts in a Wire, and you can look them up on Facebook. But it's pretty interesting to see those guys. I am definitely not 100 watts in a wire. I am a wire, but I run a little power. The bands are so poor. Now, not in my truck. Now, I've got to say, I run 100 watts in my truck, and when conditions are right, like I say, I talk all over the world. But I like to. I run 750 watts to 1,000 watts here at the house most times, and I like to key down one time, and the fella hears me. That's what I like. So
I'm able to connect through the Wilmington input and the Carver input as well as Echo. So 3 different ways to get onto a link system here. Working out pretty well.
So I'm curious, when you talk to that guy on the island of Crete, what's that conversation like? Y'all was talking about, the equipment that you use or the weather? I mean, what are y'all talking about?
That's exactly what most of those conversations are. And maybe not even that. A bunch of that kind of it's called DX. That is basically, you've probably seen it on an old car radio where you could hit the DX button and maybe catch some further away stations. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys remember that,
I remember that, yeah.
That's just distant talking, and they call it DX. But most of the time when you're chasing DX, and there's guys out there that's all they do. They want to chase DX. They want to chase far away stations, and there's awards that hams can get for doing that. And one of the main awards is DXCC, which is just the DX Century Club, which means you've talked to 100 countries. And they actually send you a certificate like you used to get for perfect attendance in school, that you can hang on your wall. I'm not real big into that, but a lot of guys are totally into that, and I don't fault them for that. And there's other guys that they have a work WAS, which is worked all states, guys that want to just work every state in the U.S. and believe it or not, there's people worldwide that are with in the ham where they call them county hunters, and they want to work every county in the United States.
Wow!
And I've had several conversations with a guy. The first time I talked to him, I thought, all right, man, I'm talking to Australia, because this dude had a deep Australian accent. Well, yeah, he was born and raised and lived in Australia all his life, and now he lives just outside of Memphis, Tennessee. So, but
not the same.
Yeah, so I've talked to him multiple times, and he's a real good guy, and we have some good conversations. But he's a county hunter, and he caught, I can't remember the number, but it's somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 counties in the United States.
Wow.
He's worked every county in the United States from Australia, and now from his new location in the United States. So that's some dedication.
That's
impressive. And what's crazy is one of the most sought after is Loving County, just west of us here in Odessa, over there in Mentone. There's
really,
that's the least populated county in Texas. And so some of there are guys from the area that sometime will go over there and work. Will set up either a portable station or try to work Loving County mobile to some of the county hunters. And man, you talk about people piling up on you. They when a lot of people are trying to get a hold of you, they call it a pile up. And man, if county hunters hear a station working Loving County, buddy, you've got a pile up, because they need it.
That's really funny. I didn't know that. How weird.
Keith, I know you're new to this and everything, but Have you ever bounced a signal off Uranus before?
Good one, Noel.
Man, we haven't used the Uranus joke in episodes.
I
I'm
got to
so
give
glad you
credit to
brought that
Steve.
one
That
back.
was Steve's question.
I'm trying to decide
Oh,
whether
man.
that would take a humongous antenna or a very small one.
Oh man. Oh, I guarantee you it hasn't worked all states. So it's okay.
Hey, Jonathan, I do have a slightly more serious question for you.
That was a good one, man.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Hey, Jonathan, as a ham operator, what's your favorite sandwich?
Oh.
Well, it would have to be a ham sandwich for sure.
Nice,
Oh,
nice.
Nothing pairs with a ham radio quite like a ham sandwich, right?
That's for sure.
Well, that's right.
Gotta keep your
Oh,
energy
man.
up.
That's
Absolutely.
correct. That's nourishment for the regular everyday ham.
Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely. Man, that's
Well, we
hilarious.
can't be serious the whole time, right? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely not.
it's interesting, John. I mean, it's so much out there. I'm so ready to buy a radio, and living this close to Russia, I like to think that maybe I can, listen in on Putin or something. And
Hey, I'll tell you what, man. Being up there in Alaska, that is a much.
I bet that's a hotbed.
It is a much sought after state. Matter of fact, as a ham, I've talked to Alaska one time.
really,
Wow.
It's
I would figure with as many people out kind of doing the roughing it thing that would be a hotbed for ham radio. But am I wrong?
no people are there trying to do it. It's just getting into it. And what's
Okay.
Speaking of Alaska, another thing that's a crazy phenomenon in ham radio is aurora. It affects radio signals like crazy.
yeah.
And
Oh yeah, I bet so.
yeah, so there's a contest station out on the Kenai Peninsula that I spoke to just within the last couple of months. I listened to this guy for couple of hours while I was mobile, and I just couldn't hit him with my mobile. And man, I got off work and I rushed home and turned my radio on here, and I hit him with 700 watts and got him. But that's basically the only station I've talked to in Alaska, and this particular guy that was running that contest station was from California, but he's got a lot of friends up there. That's a whole nother deal. That this contest and stuff, there are places that they just put together. They just dump tons of money into humongous contest stations, and that's all they do, man. They fire them up for these contests, and they've just got bukus of antennas. They call it an antenna farm. You know what I mean? It's crazy. There's a big contest station on the big island of Hawaii, and I mean that dude fires it up, and he's just booming in here. So.
You may be a popular guy up there if you get into this, man.
Yeah,
There you go.
we'll see. Just off topic slightly is, like in Texas, most of the satellite dishes, Dish Network, DirecTV, they're usually angled up 45 degrees off of houses in most cases. Here you see all the dish satellites almost like parallel to the ground, pointed at the horizon.
Oh wow.
It's so different up here. It's
Yeah, that's
Do
crazy.
they have to go up? Do they have to like extend them pretty high in order to get to the horizon a lot, or is it? I mean, I was just thinking with the mountainous areas and stuff that maybe they have to get the height, like kind of like we do when we're doing these repeater antennas. Is it the same thing for those?
no,
dishes?
I mean it's parallel. I mean it's crazy. Like
How funny.
Like I drive past the ABC affiliate station here
Yeah.
every few days a week, and even their big massive satellites out in their satellite yard just pointed. To me, it looks like that.
Like straight.
Yeah, it looks like that pointer is just straight at the horizon. It's crazy.
That's crazy. Well,
Wow.
it makes sense. I mean, because it's so high up as you all are, it makes sense. So, I was going to also say, have you all watched that show Last Man Standing with Tim Allen? Do you all ever see this show? Have you heard of it?
No.
I've seen
Have
an
you not?
episode or two.
Okay.
Just because I know where you're going with it.
Yeah. So Tim Allen is actually a licensed ham radio operator. And so basically Last Man Standing is kind of like a flip flop of Home Improvement in that instead of having 3 boys, he has 3 girls, and he works for it kind of is like a Bass Pro Shops kind of thing.
Right.
And so it's just trying to, and then, he's like basically the only guy in his house, and he's trying to still like it's kind of like he's got his own testosterone going on. Right. But anyway, but the radio that he has in the show is actually an active ham radio. And there's actually he has his own call sign and everything. There's even a Facebook page about his amateur radio that he has on this show. But it's there are these cards. What do they call those cards, Jonathan, that you can trade with people?
That's a QSL
Pokemon.
card, and they do have. I
QSL,
believe the
yeah.
call sign. I'm just trying to go from memory, but I think it's K6LMS for Last Man Standing. It's a vanity call.
Oh, that's right. It is. Yeah.
And 6 designates the California area. That's a whole other thing we haven't gotten into. You can kind of tell where somebody should be by the number in their call sign. Now we've got a local guy here that has a 7 call, but he got his license, or he got that call when he was living in Wyoming, and he just likes his call. So he's actually in Texas, which is in the 5 zone. So, 90% of the time you can tell where somebody is, the general area just by their call sign and the number in it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's some tricky guys out there,
Yeah.
But that's an active ham station there, and what they do, guys, is they make contacts during breaks and stuff. There's actually several ham operators that are on staff there, and they'll fire that station up and make contacts. And you can get a QSL card from them. Basically, a QSL card is it's kind of a postcard size. I just recently got into the QSL card game, so I'm very excited about it. I've sent just in the last several months, I got my first QSL card printed, and I've been filling them out and sending them out. And so I go to the mailbox almost every day looking for a card. Like, hey, did I get a card? Did I get a card? Because you'd send one out, and the guys will send one back to you. So
so it's kind of like that's like your it's like your wall of fame for with your information on it when you talk to people across the world. You have these cards.
Yeah, the QSL card is kind of it's a confirmation of the contact. Number one, that's how it started. To get, I mentioned the guys getting awards earlier. Well, back in the day before computer, QSL cards and handwritten logbooks were the only way to prove that you contacted somebody. Well, now they've got e-logs and a deal called Logbook of the World. You type that contact into your computer just as soon as you make it, and that guy confirms it. And it's the computer has changed that a bunch. But I've just recently gotten into QSL cards, and I'm really enjoying it. I've gotten a couple back already from Spain and Slovenia and all kinds of places. And so and I've still got some out that haven't been answered.
Right.
So I go to the mailbox every day looking to see what I've got.
Like I say, there's so many different ways that you can get involved with it. And I appreciate you just kind of, we can go on for hours talking about this. So I appreciate you just giving us kind of a sample of how to get started, the different options available from expensive to homemade to affordable to get started. And, like I say, as people get generated, excitement about this, we'd love to have you on again, maybe to go into more specific areas, things of that sort. So, but I appreciate you taking the time to visit with us and to research, just kind of things that we were interested in visiting with you about.
Absolutely, man.
Oh, you bet. I've enjoyed it. And my wife told me, don't get on there and ramble, but I feel like I probably have. But that's, hey, I'm a ham radio man. I've got a license to talk.
There you go.
That's right. And so basically, and the last thing we need to talk about is we all have unique call signs, right?
Exactly. You when you take your test, you get an FCC generated call sign. It just kind of comes in order. My call sign's KG5MIN. Your call sign is KG5LXC. Is that right?
LXK. KG5LXK. Yeah.
Okay. So with the LXK, that says you got your call sign just right before me, because mine is MIN. It goes in order. There was another guy that took the test the same morning I did, and his call is KG5MIO. So that kind of shows you it just fell in that way. I was MIN. He ended up being MIO. So it goes in sequence like that till you run out of the letters on the front of your in front of your number, which is KG5. The KG is what they call the prefix. Then you got your 5, which is your area designator, and then the MIN is the suffix. So the suffixes go in succession till they run out, and now they're on KIs, or the new calls coming out right now in the 5 zone anyway. But anyway, yeah, that's how that works. And you can pay, I think maybe like $15. You can apply for a vanity call sign. Like I could look up and see if like KG5JGG was available, and if it was, I could get it. You can change your call, but I think it's kind of neat to have the call that you were originally licensed.
Yeah,
with.
me too. It is fun. I really like it. So anyway, but yeah, so that's a cool thing that you can have, and so it's pretty neat that you can have your own call sign and kind of be proud about it. It's fun. So heck, you can even use, a lot of people use it for their email addresses and all, and I've seen license plates with them, so it's kind of cool. Yeah. People are really proud about them. So I think it's an awesome deal. So
10 dB over in Rhode Island, Mark, over.
Yeah, roger that. Propagation's pretty good tonight. You're having a good time. I've been listening. Good QSO, thanks.
Thank you for that big signal, Mark. 73s, break with you, Whiskey Echo 5.
Hey, just not wanting to change the subject or anything, but I saw a magician yesterday. Mm-hmm. Did y'all tell me this? No. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw this magician yesterday, and he turned audience members into wind turbines. I immediately became a big fan.
That's all this coming.
Ooh, that's good stuff. That's funny. I was wondering where that was going, man, for a second there.
No.
I sure hope he's got more jokes.
Yeah, right. I was wondering why y'all are so quiet and stressed out.
No, we're not going to do another courtesy laugh.
I know it.
Right.
Good one, Keith.
Oh, jerks.
Yeah. I actually, earlier today, I went and saw a psychiatrist because, it turns out I got a phobia of over-engineered buildings. And it turns out I have a complex.
Okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I had this friend this week that he couldn't afford his water bill, so I sent him a get well soon card.
That's a good one.
That is pretty good, man. I'll tell you, Jonathan's representing the whole ham radio. You've got one that's based on our theme.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was talking about when he was a brand new ham. He visited an older ham, which we spoke of way earlier as an Elmer. He was at his Elmer's house and checking out his radios and stuff like that. And they were just sitting around talking. He noticed a bowl of peanuts there, and the guy said, "Hey, do you mind if I have some of these?" And the old Elmer ham said, no problem, man. Have all you want, And they sat there and visited for a little while and talked radios, and then, time passed, and the kid's like, "Oh man, I'm sorry, man. He finally finished that bowl of peanuts, and he said, I'm sorry, I've sat here and visited and eaten all of your peanuts, sir." And that guy said, "Hey, that's no problem, man. Since I lost my teeth, all I can do is suck the chocolate off of them anyway."
Oh, shit.
That's good.
That's just terrible, man. Can you just imagine? Oh. I can't believe I got arrested the other day for impersonating a politician.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was just sitting around doing nothing. There's my only political stuff I'll ever say right there.
Nice. Hey guys, do German cats have multiple lives?
Dude, German cats have multiple
lives.
I don't know.
9.
Oh, jeez. I'm pretty sure we've had that one before.
Yeah, but you don't remember.
Was it as painful as the last time? Nice one.
So Siri kept calling me Shirley today, and I was starting to get really angry, and then I realized why.
Why is that?
Why?
I left my phone in airplane mode.
That's a classic movie.
It is.
Yeah, oh
The
man,
greatest-
that's one of the best
greatest
ever.
movies ever.
I'm gonna have to introduce that one to my boy.
Yeah.
I don't think he's seen Airplane yet,
Yeah.
and that is perfection.
Yeah.
Have you all seen the second one, the
Yes.
space shuttle one?
Yes.
That to me, that one's every bit as fun.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna run this thing to a close. Jonathan, man, thanks again for joining us and talking with us about ham radio. I know we've been real excited about having this. There's been a lot of people who've got interest in this, and so appreciate you kind of introducing this world to us, and I really, really appreciate you being on.
That's awesome,
Hey, you
man.
bet. Like my wife said, don't ramble, but I tend to because
License to talk.
like I say, man, I'm on the microphone every day, man. There's not a day goes by that I'm not on the radio. I love it. And,
That's great.
I'm willing to promote it at any point.
Well, we appreciate you doing that, and appreciate you being on. And again, like I say, if you guys have any other questions, please send us some messages about it, and we'll be glad to kind of give you some information about that. Remember, our email is info@testosteronepodcast.com. Send us a tweet, something, anything you want to do to be able to relay it and give you some more information about how to get started with amateur radio. So for this, guys, we're going to wrap up old 65, and we will talk with everybody next week.
Awesome.
Appreciate everybody listening.
All right. Good night, guys.
Take care, guys.
Take care, buddy.
Hey, thanks again for listening to the Testosterone Zone. We sure had a blast visiting with you. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe, leave us some feedback, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram.
All Testosterone Podcast episodes are written and produced by Noel, Keith, and Steve unless otherwise noted. The opinions expressed in the Testosterone Podcast are our own and not those of our employers, families, parents, kids, dogs, cats, your mom, or any other entity Noel, Keith, or Steve are affiliated with now, in the past, or in the future, or ever.